Hi, everybody. Richard Tromans here from Artificial Lawyer, talking to Zach Abramowitz about legal innovators. Hi, Zach. Great to have you on the show.
Hey there, Richard. Excited to be here and excited about the upcoming conference.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It'll be the first event that I've attended in the UK since last year. So I'm very, very excited as well. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you'll be doing at the conference?
Sure. So I am the founder of Killer Whale Strategies. We are a consultancy that works with law firms, legal departments, legal service organizations, basically anyone who wants to capitalize on the current disruption taking place in the legal industry, mostly impacted by tech.
Fantastic. And yeah, we will be definitely looking forward to your keynote as
And
well.
yeah, and I'm excited about the keynote, and we were just talking about it. The topic of the keynote is going to be is AI eating legal technology, and I think there's a pretty strong case to be made for that. That many of the kind of not just the software companies themselves, but many of the trends that we've been used to and we've grown accustomed to, long adoption curves, long sales cycles, reluctant attorneys. I think we're starting to see a lot of that turn, and I think that's a good thing.
No, absolutely. Well, let's unpack that a little bit. So, for people who are tuning into this one, we're going to be going for about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. We're going to look at a variety of subjects, mostly centered around AI, as you might have guessed, and also to some degree prefiguring some of the conversations we'll be having at Legal Innovators in November in London, November 8th and 9th. But let's just go back to what Zach was saying about AI eating legal tech. That's a good way of putting it. So what is different this time? I mean, a lot of people are familiar with natural language processing. They saw a whole bunch of companies from Kira to Luminance to eBrevia, a whole bunch of them. And then the large research companies like Lexis and Thomson Reuters brought in the same technology for their results, and it really spread, it really proliferated. I mean, one of the things that surprised me was actually how after about 4 or 5 years, nearly every major legal tech tool had a little slice of NLP in there to some degree, and yet it didn't, I guess, to some degree, create the great revolution that some people were hoping. It did drive efficiency, it did improve things. Is it different this time?
Listen, one of the talks that I have been giving inside of big firms and inside of legal departments and to a lot of our clients, and we're doing AI workshops. One of the things that I like to start with is a basic understanding that like AI didn't just begin in November of 2022 when ChatGPT was released. AI has existed for years. I've been helping companies find AI partners. Baker McKinsey's partnership with Spark Beyond is certainly a massive partnership between a law firm and a deep learning company. That's one that I'm very proud of. There have been others, right? There are legal departments that are using Legalmation, a company I invested in, to automate huge portions of their early litigation filings. And in some senses, you could talk about Legalmation as kind of generative AI before it was popular. Instead of giving work to attorneys in order for them to produce certain documents to give to the other side, if you're able to drag and drop that into an AI that will then produce those documents themselves, I don't know how you describe that other than quote unquote generative AI.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember writing about a company called, I think it was Specifio, out on the west coast of America, that was involved in patent drafting, and that was effectively generative AI to some degree as well. So you're absolutely right. I mean, generative AI didn't just suddenly begin November last year. There's been a whole bunch of things happening.
Right. So
Um,
and that's usually the first part of my talk is showing people like there has been AI in legal. I would say over the last 10 or 15 years is when we've seen the development and proliferation of these tools, very much in light of Amazon Web Services and the boom of startups that created and that enabled.
no,
But
absolutely, absolutely.
but I mean, this is my big qualifier.
Mm,
Yeah, everything is different now. And I think that the sooner that people are able to wrap their heads around the idea that There has been a major breakthrough, and we are in the midst of exponential progress. And it is growing faster than the human mind is really capable of comprehending. I think the sooner you realize that, the sooner you sort of the light bulb, the eureka goes off, and you start to see things differently. And I do think that we are in the middle of such a breakthrough. And I think it's silly to assume that AI was just created now. It's also just as silly, if not more, to think that what we're seeing right now is some kind of incremental progress. We are seeing a complete paradigm shift in AI, and in particular, the fact that the large language model can, at some level, and this gets to be deeply philosophical, read and comprehend text. It can understand what you as a human are trying to get it to do. It can understand you. And because it can understand you, it can also communicate back with you. That means that we're not talking about the old days of word matching and rules. What we're talking about is a human being being able to communicate with an artificial intelligence, with spelling errors, with punctuation problems, with use of slang, because the machine has a different level of comprehension of language than we are used to date. And I think this is a really challenging topic, because it not only challenges what it is we've come to expect of technology, but I think, Richard, it does something even more confusing, which is it challenges what it is we believe about humans.
No, I agree. I mean, as I've often said, technology produces this unexpected benefit, which is that it enables us to actually look more objectively at ourselves.
Yeah.
Even in the field of legal, by bringing in technology and saying, hey, we can improve this process. The lawyers go, oh, we didn't realize we actually had a process here. We just reviewed contracts. No, you can break it down into a sequence and look at all the different areas where we can produce efficiency and so forth. And then you actually start by bringing in something from outside, you actually start to become more objective about the thing you're in.
And a perfect example of that, by the way, is the hallucinations, right? Because everyone wants to talk, especially the skeptics, want to talk about how large language models hallucinate, and how there are lawyers who've asked, for legal questions, and they've gotten answers that looked like a very real brief with citations to what looked like very real cases that were completely hallucinated. And my first reaction to that is, well, that sounds like that old senior partner who is just convinced that there's a case out there on some, that responds to some issue. When this is an experience that every young lawyer has had, when there's a senior partner, he says, I just know there's case law out there on this topic, and yet it can't be found. This happens all the time. So that's my first reaction is, before we blame or castigate artificial intelligence for what it's not able to do, can we take a step back and recognize that a lot of those same flaws and foibles apply to human beings? And then the second thing it makes me think is, maybe you've missed the whole point. If I ask ChatGPT a legal question and it provides me with real answer, with what look like real answers, what look like citations to real cases, maybe that is how the average judge is going to look at the issue. So maybe the names of the cases are different. Maybe some of the fact patterns are a little bit different, but ChatGPT is effectively trying to statistically predict the next word, the next sequence of words. So the answer that it gives may ultimately be the way that a judge will look at an issue.
Yeah, well, there are about 100 million points there to unpack, but all of these things will be discussed. Legal Innovators in November in London, November 8th and 9th. But let's just move on to a slightly different aspect that you raised earlier, which is, I mean, we were talking about some of the tools that have existed for many years. So let's take something very, very straightforward, or relatively straightforward, document review.
Yeah.
So people who did it manually. Then there was the sort of basic, as you say, word matching. Then more complicated natural language processing came along, which has actually become very sophisticated. Why use an LLM tool or an LLM based or connected tool when you have natural language processing, which is already producing very good results? I mean, are you just simply just swapping over? It's like moving from, like, Betamax to VHS. There's no real big difference. Or are you actually getting a completely different level of return?
So I think there's a bunch of reasons. First of all, and it's a frightening thought, but I would say in the overwhelming majority of cases, the available tools on the market are not as effective as large language models at just about everything. It's not always true.
You're going to get
not,
that.
It's not always true. And I know, and nobody wants to hear this, but the capabilities are simply not up to par with what large language models can produce, right? And that has to do with the process of vector embedding, which large language models are specifically amazing at doing. The large language model variety is way more powerful than anything that's come before it. So I think that's one aspect. The other, I think, is ultimately going to be cost. One of the things that is magnificent about all of these new tools is that because there's such a base level of artificial intelligence that is so high as a threshold, it means it's much easier to develop ML applications than it has been to date, right? So if you think about the world of on-prem and client servers, that was when software was very, very difficult to build, and really only the biggest companies like IBM, like Oracle, were building these very bespoke solutions for their customers. Then you have cloud, right? And cloud comes in, and now all of a sudden you've got venture capital firms that are backing every single SaaS startup, because companies can now build without having to spin up their own servers, without having to maintain them. And the cost is just dramatically lower. I think where we could be heading now in the world of AI is not only do you not have to spin up your own servers because we've got cloud, you don't even have to build your own AI. So now it's going to become increasingly less expensive, and there's going to be less of a moat to building these tools. And I think we're going to see an absolute explosion of amazing products that are able to accomplish. And I already know this, within my own startups, Term Scout is a perfect example. Since applying large language models, was able to go from being able to treat 2 contract types to very quickly being able to deal with 10, right? 10 was a number that they had wanted to get to by like 2025. They're already there now. Like, this is making significant progress in technology. And I think ultimately the greatest thing here is going to be the cost. Now that you have these LLM providers like, Anthropic, like Stability, like OpenAI, like Gemini, which is coming out, we're going to see an entire new wave of innovation unfold, and anyone's guess is as good as mine.
So what happens to the legal tech companies? I mean, most have built some form of connection to OpenAI or Anthropic or some others. Some have gone deeper and really integrated at a very, very deep level. Others, it's basically just a very, very weak little API going in. But what is going to happen? I mean, we've already seen a lot of law firms build their own tools using a mixture of, for example, OpenAI, Microsoft Suite. How does it balance out? I mean, do law firms go, well, look, we built this review tool. We built this tool that will zip through our knowledge management and produce a nice first draft of X contract. We don't need XYZ legal tech tool anymore. Or is it the other way around, that this is just kind of hobbyist era? We're in kind of like 1982 for personal computers, and the world's full of hobbyists. But eventually the private companies get it together and they just go, well, okay. And they just start to build really, really well. And they build great tools. And they effectively make it so easy to use, so compelling, that there's no point building your own anymore. But building your own is just a pain. Why be a hobbyist?
So this is a great question, and I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out. But here's what I believe legal technology companies are up against. On the one hand, you're right. They've got the AI models now. They've got LLMs. They can connect to the OpenAI API. They can begin, as I've talked about with Term Scout, they can begin to create exponentially better solutions. At the same time, it's kind of like trying to build Netflix while maintaining Blockbuster. They've got baggage. Every one of these companies has made investments to date that are going to be very, very hard to part with. But the fact is, so much of software is going to move towards AI and very likely towards a chat interface. So if you've spent tons and tons of time working on making your product very easy to use and building a very intuitive user interface, you still have to click. You still have to point. You still have to drag. You still have to know how to use the software. I mean, Relativity, for crying out loud, has certification programs where you get certified in various levels of relativity excellence. What I think we may be trending towards is an environment in which the way you use software is, you know what you want, you speak a spoken language, and you tell the software, I want this, and it delivers it to you. And all of the UI and all of the UX is simply not there. Now, I don't know for sure, but that seems like where we're headed. So on the one hand, I see a lot of companies incorporating AI products. I just saw Ironclad announced, their AI product. I think I've seen similar CLMs. And it could be that these tools make those products specifically better. But I'll tell you what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a company that says, we are building CLM from scratch in a world where AI exists. In a world where AI exists, in a world where large language models exist, and we know about them, and we know their powers, and we know their capabilities. If we were designing a CLM end to end today, how would it look? Would it look different? And I think that is, to me, the big question. How many products are going to be able to incorporate this easily versus how many products are going to effectively have to cannibalize themselves? And that is like not simple. If you look, Relativity was able to make the transition from a on-prem provider to a cloud-based provider. I think they're still kind of in that transition. That was not simple. And look at all of the other e-discovery companies that weren't able to sort of carry through and eventually kind of achieve that kind of success. We could be looking at something very similar when it comes to a lot of legal technology today. So I think they've got a huge opportunity, but some may be in the position where they have to cannibalize themselves, and that's frightening.
Again, it's so many things to discuss, and we'll be discussing those at Legal Innovators on both days. Day one is law firms and ALSPs, and day two is in-house counsel and legal ops. What is this going to actually mean for the lawyers themselves? Will this actually really change the means of production, a phrase that I love to use? I mean, will they really, really, really change? Or is this just kind of like adding a turbocharger to some of the things they already do? They'll just be a little bit slicker, a little bit faster. They'll have the data that's available at their fingertips will be more comprehensive, perhaps deeper into the subject matter, perhaps even more accurate. But will this trigger this kind of cascading change in the same way that we've seen in other technological revolutions and evolutions, where what came before just simply cannot function anymore? But the environment changes. Are we heading towards that? And we'll have to try and keep this kind of brief. Are we heading to something really seismic?
I don't know. Here's what I do know. I know that the appetite for machine learning and artificial intelligence has never been greater inside of law firms and legal departments. I'm telling you, as someone who's in this, I've never seen so many companies who are opening up their pocketbooks and saying, we want to explore this. We want to lean into this trend. We need to know this environment better. This can really help us. That's, to me, the biggest difference is the cultural adoption, because never has it been the case that I might use a tool for drafting a memorandum of law that my sixth my sixth grader uses for writing an essay. There's something that is pervasive about that. This has been the 2023 has absolutely been the year of AI. And it's hard to believe that that's not going to have any downstream impacts or any second order effects. So that's what I'll be watching.
Fantastic. Thanks, Zach. And just to round off, if you could just tell us just, why you're so excited about attending Legal Innovators. I know you came last year and enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
What makes it special for you?
Yeah. So I had an opportunity to speak at last year's conference, and it was fantastic. I think that what I like about the conference, first of all, it's in London, one of my favorite cities on the planet. Second of all, it is a conference that doesn't feel large enough to be overwhelming and intimidating, but has a packed standing room only energy to it. And I've rarely been at conferences where it felt like everyone is going into the sessions and only a few people are kind of like hanging around outside. That, to me, is the vibe of this event. It is big enough to have really electric energy, but at the same time, not overwhelming for those who don't like, walking onto an exhibit floor with lots of flashing lights and thousands of guests. So I've sort of tried to avoid that second kind of conference this year. What I look for are events where I'm really going to learn something, and I know that I'm going to come to Legal Innovators and learn something.
Fantastic. And yeah, I am certainly going to learn plenty as well. So thanks, Zach. And it's been a learning experience as always. Just
looking forward to seeing you, Richard.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Me too. All right. Take care. Bye.